Hey everybody! Seeing as it's the end of 2022, I thought it might be fun to look back at the very best and worst WADs the WADinator picked for us. In this video, I'll be sharing my top 5 best and worst WADs, along with 2 honorable mentions. Let's get started. The 5th worst position actually goes to 2 WADs, Think 11 and Think 12. Despite the author's insistence that these are thoughtful maps that require you to, quote, use your brain to complete them, in reality, all that it does is throw the same typical 90s traps at you. Random teleporting line defs that put you into unfortunate, borderline inescapable situations, random crushing ceilings, the works. This one's best avoided. The 5th best entry goes to Damn 2. This is one that I actually wanted to put a little bit higher up, but unfortunately I can't because the gameplay progression is a little bit on the wonky side. However, this map has some pretty good fights, pretty good visuals, overall decent layout, definitely above average for the time, and in general I just had a lot of fun with it. Definitely recommend giving this one a shot. The 4th worst slot goes to Death 3. Oh, what do I even say about this? I mean, it's probably a beginner's effort, but at the same time, that doesn't really excuse its release. I mean, as I've always said, by all means, learn, experiment, do your thing. Doesn't necessarily mean you should upload it to public bulletin boards. This map is just a humongous arena, piled with ammo, and the arena is actually so big that a lot of Doom systems just don't work right. The node builder clearly had a fit with this one. There's HOM everywhere, just in various spots. I believe this was intended to be a deathmatch map, but I don't think it would be any more fun there either, because, I mean, hit scanning really doesn't work over those distances, and all you would basically end up doing is just slinging projectiles all over the place. The only reason this one isn't higher on the list is because, I mean, I guess it's innocent enough, but yeah, it's definitely not worth your time. The 4th best WAD this year is Showdown 2. If you ask somebody from 1994 what a slaughter map would look like, they'd probably point you to this. This is just absolutely unashamed of what it is. It's just an arena with enemies, and that's about it, really. I mean, there's a few switches to hit here and there just to actually progress with the map. I mean, you kind of need those, I guess. But in general, you just kind of walk around and kill stuff. There's something just very beautiful in its simplicity. Of course, the visuals really aren't anything to write home about, even by 1994 standards, but I really focus more on fun with this series, and I had a lot of fun with this one. The 3rd worst map this year is DMCWRD2. So this one just kind of dials up the 90s sadism a little bit. There's 4 paths that you can go on, and only one of those paths actually leads to some sort of victory. The rest of them just lead you into some sort of trap, some like spiral of sadness, fights that you can't win, just basically whatever sick, twisted idea that the author had in their head that day. And to make matters worse, during my playthrough I seemed to encounter a bug that caused the line def action to not function properly, so even when I went on the correct path, I still ended up getting soft locked. The main reason that this one's sitting at number 3 is because it's not as sadistic or as bad as some of the other maps this year. Let that sink in for a few seconds. The 3rd best WAD we played this year is CJD E1L1. So this one was a pleasant surprise. It had significantly above average visuals compared to most of the other maps that we've played. I mean, light sourcing, a lot of varying light levels, just generally good use of texturing, a lot of variety in the environments. And the best part about it is it's not a slouch in the gameplay department either. There's a lot of solid fights, including perhaps the earliest example of a WAD author trapping the player in a corridor and having demons kind of run up towards them, just kind of spawning in through a teleporter. Something that you see a lot in modern maps, but you really didn't see at all in this era. It really makes me wonder what kind of maps the author would be producing if they were still a part of the modern Doom scene, and they had access to all the Boom specials and the Z-Doom features and stuff of that nature. I guess we'll just have to speculate. In the meantime, give this one a play. It's pretty awesome. The 2nd worst WAD of this year is The Teat 2. I'm sure anyone who's watched enough D-Zoned episodes will know that this one was coming. Oh boy. I think the most unfortunate part about this one for me is that it started off with such promise. I mean, it actually had like kind of a nail-biting fight with an Archvile at the very beginning, but then that just ended up devolving into typical 94 BS. I mean, at one point, you have to go through a maze, which is hidden on the auto map, and if you cross a random line def that's completely unmarked, it'll just start a crusher, basically instantly killing you. There's a very simple way of accidentally soft locking, and there's no way of recovering from that, which incidentally is the entrance to the maze. How appropriate. And then there's the other wing of the map where there's just a bunch of crushers that you have to go through to get mandatory keys. This is bad, folks. I mean, there's no excuse for any of this. This is bad now. It was bad back then. If you really insist on playing it, IDDQD, IDFA. Actually, better yet, IDKFA. Just give yourself all the damn keys and just finish the thing off. Not worth playing. Don't recommend it whatsoever. Next map, please. The second best WOD of the year is UAC Dead. So this one's been making it onto most memorable Doom map lists pretty much since its inception. I distinctly remember like old books from the era, just books on Doom editing and what have you, covering this WOD. It's really no stranger to the limelight, and with good reason, honestly. This map was noteworthy when it came out, not only because it used some new Doom editing tricks that were available at the time, such as the invisible bridges that were featured in kind of the Hell section later on in the map, but also because it tried to replicate somewhat realistic environments. Like, you'd see a lot of little spatterings of Doom cute kind of scattered around there, which is no small feat given the editors that were available at the time. And the thing that really glues it together is some pretty solid combat, good ambushes. Overall, just a very fun WOD to play, even by today's standards. And with that ringing endorsement, you're probably wondering how this is only in the number 2 slot. Frequent D-Zoned viewers will probably have a pretty good idea of what number 1 is, but let's just say that I feel that there is one map this year that does edge this out in terms of fun factor. We'll get to that shortly. The worst map of the year goes to FCM1. What the fuck? What's going on? Oh my god. The fuck is this? Well, this is... Oh, jeez. So, this is clearly a deathmatch map, if you want to call it that. With a bunch of invisible bullshit everywhere. You just randomly run through these... What the fuck is this? Like, you can't leave when you get the... Whew, that was painful. Alright, before we go to the number 1 map of the year, we have a couple honorable mentions. First of all, I would like to shine an ambition spotlight on Star Wars 2.WOD. Now, this one isn't going to win any gameplay awards. In a lot of ways, it's not really even going to win any visual awards. Gameplay and visuals are more or less just serviceable. What impressed me was the author's goal of recreating the Death Star from Star Wars A New Hope. Now, apparently they based most of the design on actual blueprints that were released at some point in time. I'm not really familiar with the details on those. I feel that the author of this map did a fantastic job of recreating the overall feeling and appearance of the Death Star while just restricting themselves to the Doom textures. As you figure, custom textures weren't really all that common in that era, and they weren't used here. I mean, as I mentioned, the gameplay isn't anything to write home about, but I do highly recommend giving this one a shot just for the pure spectacle of it all. It's kind of like an early Mucus Flow, am I right? Okay, moving on. And now I would like to give a huge shout out to the Heretic map, Lava Pit. Now, anyone who's watched H-Zoned will probably recognize this as the only map that I was really super positive about, like all the way through. And I'd say this map is easily good enough to be part of the base game. And as I mentioned in the commentary, it actually feels better than a lot of the expansion pack maps. And I really do mean that. It plays very well, the combat feels fair, fairly well balanced. The texturing is good, about as good as you can get with Heretic's limited palette, if you will. And just overall, it's just a very fun map. I don't know, there's not really a whole lot to say about it. I'd recommend giving it a shot. And now, the number 1 best D-Zoned map we played this year is... Infest. Oh boy, this one was an unexpected hit for me. I really didn't know what to expect going in, obviously. That's kind of the whole thing with this series. But I wasn't expecting like this kind of solid action, especially out of a Doom 1 map. Because I mean, usually in a lot of cases with Doom 1 maps, you end up getting into this slog where you're constantly shotgunning barons and blah blah blah, you know how it goes. But not in this case. This one just felt solid all the way through. It always kind of felt like you were going somewhere, doing something, shooting something. I mean, it's Doom after all. And just overall, it really doesn't feel like something that would have been made in 1994. I mean, in a lot of ways, it still looks like a 1994 WOD, you know, one with above average visuals, but as I've said numerous times, it's not about the visuals in this series, for me at least. It's all about the gameplay, and in this case, it's just absolutely stellar. I highly recommend giving this one a shot for yourself, because this one just aged remarkably well for what it is. Well, I think that concludes my best and worst list for the year. If you feel like there's any that I neglected, feel free to leave a comment down below. I will say this list was pretty tough to make, mostly the top 5, because there were a lot of contenders that were kind of tied for 5th more or less, so I kind of ended up having to go just based on feel and, you know, all that good stuff. But that's all for this year, I suppose. I hope you all have a safe and happy new year, and we'll see you in 2023. Take it easy.